Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. I'm Mayur, and in today's episode we are going to discuss more about risk management. In the previous part we discussed about information risk management, the IRM policy, and understood the details of the acceptable level of risk. This is part 2 of risk management, and I would strongly suggest you to watch part 1 for better understanding. In today's episode we are going to discuss about risk assessment, what are the steps to conduct a risk assessment in detail. So without any delay, let's get started. Assessing the risk. See, a lot of questions in risk management domain ask what is the first step in terms of risk management. I would say it's always support or buy-in from the management. Without that, every exercise in assessing or mitigating the risk is futile. For the purpose of this discussion, we will assume that as a security professional, you have received this go-ahead. Now you wish to start the process of risk assessment and want to decide what to do. Risk assessment is one of the tools for risk management. It involves identifying vulnerabilities, threats, and quantify the probability to achieve a risk value and a heat map. So just identify the vulnerabilities and threats as a first step. Step by step process for a risk assessment. See, while you feel that this is too easy to accomplish, this is one of the most trickiest parts of the risk assessment process. At this point, it is very important to issue you a caveat. This is risk assessment and not risk management. Over the course of this discussion, you will also find NIST risk management framework that is completely different. Even before you start identifying the assets and the next steps, as a security professional, you need to understand the scope of this exercise. See, if there are 1,000 assets in your organization catering to 10 business units, you cannot start identifying each one of them. This is a common mistake which security professionals often do, and this leads to project failure and scope creep. Be clear about what is the scope and then start with the process. What is the process? Identify assets and their value. Identify vulnerabilities. Then identify the threats. Then identify the likelihood of the occurrence and its corresponding business impact. And finally, suggest the countermeasures. See, the first step in risk assessment we saw was the asset identification and assigning a value to it. Simple, right? See, just check the bill amount and you are done. Oh, wish life was so simple. Any asset's value is inclusive of multiple aspects. What is the data criticality, cost to replace the asset, how much it costs to maintain, what damage would result if it were lost or destroyed. The business owner can detail out the criticality of the information and its importance in terms of the revenue it generates. Say, for example, a web server that holds a customer's order details is quite critical in comparison to a server that holds dummy data for testing purposes. Another point to note is that professionals tend to exclude some assets like printers or peripheral devices or chairs, etc. All assets must be included in what is in scope. They will hold less value, yes, but nevertheless it cannot be zero. See, this may sound repetitive, but it makes sense to repeat it. Every organization is different, and hence they will have different threats and different vulnerabilities. If your organization, say, has an office near the coastal region, the threat of tsunami is quite probable. However, if you are in a landlocked region and thousands of miles away, this threat is not even applicable. Similarly, if you do not have an online or a digital presence, then vulnerabilities related to web servers becomes irrelevant for your organization. See, this table just presents a sample of such vulnerabilities and threats which an organization may face. Identifying such aspects with the help of discussions with various teams results in a much better identification of these aspects. You are very likely, and pun intended, to see this when someone talks about risk. The next step in the risk assessment is to identify the probability of a vulnerability getting exploited resulting in a threat. However, probability is just one side of the risk story. The other side is impact. This is an important aspect to be considered in the risk assessment. Taking our previous example, the probability of a tsunami considering historical data is just once in 10 years. So we may select option B, say unlikely for it. However, if a tsunami comes, it will have a severe impact on the organization. Taking both these parameters into consideration, the overall risk would be medium high, and that is the way risk can be assessed. The next step is to suggest countermeasures basis the risks that have been identified. We'll discuss more on the countermeasure selections in upcoming episodes. See, often people who attempt ISC square exams complain about the fact that this had confusing language. I was tricked with, by the English language and its usage in the context of information security questions. A simple tip would be to read the question again and again slowly to actually check what is being asked. So you can always check out my blog for more such stuff. If you really liked that video, give it a thumbs up and share it across with your friends. You can also check out my sample exams on SSCP and CISSP on Udemy or Simpliv if you are preparing for the same. Thank you guys for watching this episode, and I hope to see you in my next video.